On this week's episode of the Happy Thriving Mums podcast, I am talking with Jo Ferrone. She is the founder of How Does She Do It? Jo's business is all about empowering women to be able to stand up, enter a room, and be undeniably themselves. We talk about all kinds of things in this conversation. We talk about her journey through motherhood, her difficulty within her pregnancies, how she started her business, and how she helps women to be able to be confident in who they are and stand up and really shine. This is a wonderful conversation. I hope that you enjoy it. Hello and welcome to the Happy Thriving Mums podcast, the show that talks about the challenges women face whilst navigating motherhood and perimenopause. Family life is often far from perfect, but this podcast aims to help mums reconnect with themselves, find the magic amongst the mess, and offer simple ways to prioritise their own health, fitness and well-being to allow them to truly thrive. And it doesn't stop there. This show also includes amazing stories from remarkable women who help others to be the best version of themselves and dare you to truly believe that your dream life is available to you. Because it is. We only get one life. There'll be incredible moments and challenging ones, but how we choose to show up matters. So grab a coffee or a tea, take a moment for yourself, and let's navigate this journey together. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Happy Thriving Mums podcast. I am so delighted to have the wonderful Jo with us here today. Hello, Jo.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Amanda. It's really great to be here.
Well, I am so pleased you're here, and this has been a long time coming, so it's wonderful that we've finally managed to sit down together, so thank you. So we will start as I start with all of my guests, and I would like to invite you to do a school run pitch. So picture this, you've got to the school gates, you're dropping the kids off, you're going off to your next meeting or wherever you're going. You're always in a rush because I think everyone is at the school gates, but somebody just gently taps you on the shoulder and has a quick conversation and then just says, just remind me, what is it that you do again? What would you say to them?
I'd let them know that I run a community supporting female business owners and aspiring female business owners as well, called How Does She Do It? Because I don't believe that we can do all the things at the same time. And under that How Does She Do It umbrella, I offer online membership, one-to-one mentoring, in business, life and mindset, because I feel they're all intrinsically linked. And I host nurturing networking events online and in Surrey and Hampshire, as well as online co-working events, and I host a podcast too. And I'm also a poet, so I support people with affirmative poetry for day-to-day life.
Wow, you are one busy lady. That is so many things. I love it. So firstly, I think, well, which direction would you like to go? Would you like to talk about your poetry first, or would you like to talk about how did she do it? Because I think the question is, how do you do it? Because that is a lot of things on your plate there that you are juggling amongst general life, being a mum and all of these things. So let's just start at the beginning, shall we? How did this come about? How did this all start? What was the magic idea?
Well, I wouldn't say it was a magic idea. I would say it was more a way of coping, because I really struggled when, in various points in motherhood, and one of the things that I struggled with when I decided to start my first business was actually getting to a networking event as well, particularly because back in those days, the good old days, because it's quite a while ago now, there weren't really any child-friendly events. And so I would have to make such logistical arrangements to ensure that my boys were getting to preschool and school. And then I would try and get across, half an hour to get to a networking meeting. And it was a lot. But also I would say that I lost a lot of confidence when I became a mum. And so by starting my business in the first place, it was an opportunity which I felt was really needed to just see whether business Jo still existed. The Jo that had a corporate career, a thriving corporate career, up up in London, and it's very interesting how when our roles change, it can have a massive effect on both our head and our heart, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think when you become a mum, it does change you. It changes you in almost every way. And I think you all of a sudden have extra hats that you never had before. And you go from knowing yourself as you said, this corporate person, you had your job, you know what you did, where you were, and all of those things. Then all of a sudden, you start to question yourself, which is really, really interesting. So, before you became a mum, what was your job? Where were you? What were you doing there?
I was in the publishing industry for the majority of my career, but I had moved my way around a massive publishing house for a good decade, and then decided I wanted to just sort of experience some other industries as well. So actually, the last role I was in before I got pregnant um, was it was in a marketing agency, and so I but that all ended very quickly because I got very poorly with my pregnancy. So it's that began my journey, I guess, of stepping away from corporate, whether I'd intended to quite so soon or not. And yeah, that's kind of where my path led after corporate. But I loved my corporate days, absolutely loved it. I think many of us have time in our 20s where we do the London thing, and I learned so much along the way and had a lot of fun too.
Oh, well, it's very, as you said, the London thing I think is a big thing, especially it's a draw, isn't it? Was there? There's like a phrase, everyone goes to London, isn't there? Like I don't know no, so much now with the younger generations coming through whether it's still a draw, but I think when that was the thing, wasn't it? You went to school, you went to university, you went to London, you worked. That was a normal path. I think, especially if you grew up down south, that was a very normal thing. But it sounds like, firstly, I'm sorry that you had a difficult time in your pregnancy. That sounds hard. And then navigating that at the same time as having a change within work can be really, really tough.
It really knocked me off my feet. I think, rightly or wrongly, when you get pregnant, I mean, first of all, I felt so lucky because I know not everyone can. I felt incredibly grateful, but I knew I didn't necessarily want to stay in corporate once I had my child, but I also wrongly assumed that I'd probably have at least 7 or 8 months to round off my job in the marketing agency, to do handover, to feel like I had all my ducks in a row before I moved on to that next part of my life. But unfortunately, I think it was within about 7 or 8 weeks, I just got very poorly. I had hyperemesis gravidarum, which wasn't spoken about so much then as it has been in more recent years. And so I literally got put in a taxi by my boss one day and went back to Kingston, and I was in A&E that night because I'd just been so unwell through the sickness, the extreme morning sickness, and yeah, and that's where my many trips to hospital began, and yeah, I completely lost myself.
I think it's really challenging as well because was that with your first child as well?
Yeah. And my second, but I mean that it was a lot worse with my first.
Because I think when you're pregnant for the first time, it's a whole uncertain experience anyway, isn't it? You literally have no idea how your body's going to react. I don't think we really prepare ourselves for the physical changes, but I think there's also a lot of internal changes as well. So having that on its own as a pregnant woman, but then having to also manage and cope with the situation of being in and out of hospital, having so many more medical appointments to attend to, it can be really, really challenging. So navigating that as a first time mum especially, I think is really, really hard. But then on the flip side of that, that often then becomes a normal, doesn't it? That's your lived experience. So in a way, and I think you mentioned you had it with your second as well, that's what you feel pregnancy is. And I can just see how that can then change and challenge your kind of feelings about yourself after that as well.
Yeah, it was a traumatic time, and when you're that unwell, you're not seeing people. You've almost just dropped off the edge of the earth. It was a very, very difficult time. And you say about the second time round, when we found out I was pregnant, we went to the doctors, not in a sort of panicked way, but just to alert them and say, I had this before. We're really hoping it's not going to happen again. And I had the doctor, who was actually the head of the surgery at that time. He looked at me like this and was like, yeah, I know what it is. It's a bit of morning sickness. And I, oh my gosh,
Oh, I'm sorry, Jo.
it was so degrading, and sorry.
No, I'm
And
sorry.
I yeah, it brought up an awful lot for me because I knew how much soul searching we'd had to do before we eventually decided to try for another baby. Because after the experience, I remember saying to my husband, um, I know we always said we'd love to have two kids, but there is no way I can ever go through that again. And of course, time is a healer. But that experience with the doctor, I've never spoken about that publicly.
I can only, I can only imagine that that it's heartbreaking because you've already lived it, and then to have that kind of throwaway comment speaks a lot still, doesn't it, about how I mean, we could go down a real wormhole here and talk about medical practices and research and how men versus women, like the research about medical issues and all of those things. But that's not a heartfelt way to be leading a medical practice when you've been so vulnerable going in and honest to try and gain help in the first instance. So I'm incredibly sorry for your experience. And I hope that the care that you received afterwards, you managed to find a way to actually get heard and get the support that you needed.
We got there. We got there in the end. Absolutely.
So with your children, how many years apart was or are they, should I say?
Yeah, they are 4.5 years apart, so a big age gap. And it felt like everyone else at the time had like an 18-month age gap, and people were like, "Oh gosh, why the big age gap?" So, well, and of course, people go through a lot worse than I've been through. But yeah, 4.5 years. So I was able to once my eldest went off to school, I was able to have that time with my then sort of 6 months old, and give him what I'd been able to give his brother actually, which was precious. It wasn't easy for me, but it was precious. It was what I wanted to do. I wanted to bring them up and be at home with them.
I think it's there's a beautiful thing for that because I think when you do have those two little ones which are both 18 months apart, 2 years apart, it's it's well, it's challenging having a baby at any time, at any day, at any age with any sibling, but having that gap allows you to have that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like that time, that specific time where you can actually dedicate it to them at different points and grow from the experience with them. So it's tricky as well, isn't it? Doesn't because I think, as you said, with the so many people with that short age gap, you feel it feels different when you're doing something different, and it's not a case of there's any right or wrong in it. It's just something slightly different, which actually is wonderful. And how did you find the experience of that? The difference and the kind of against the
Do you know what?
norms, maybe.
I didn't have I didn't have the most confidence. I had quite a lot of inner self-talk, which wasn't, looking back, wasn't particularly helpful or supportive.
Mm-hmm.
I, interestingly, I speak a lot in my business now and in talks that I do about imposter syndrome and comparison. And if I think back then, I I compared myself unfavorably with many people, not out loud, but internally. And I kind of put myself down that others had gone back to work and were, thriving in their career still. And should I have sent the boys to nursery? Would they have been more socially independent? Because they were a bit reticent, when it came to going into preschool and school, both of them, even though neither of them had seen that of each other because I had the bigger age gap. So it wasn't like it was learned behavior. But I made that wrong about me. And I remember I would say to my husband, oh, I should have gone back to work. I should have put them in nursery because then they'd be more confident at going and doing these sorts of things. And so I think I'd love to know what other mums feel and how they find it because I wasn't I wasn't speaking that openly with people at that time about this feeling, and I think I carried a lot. And actually, my husband's always said, you know, if there's something that we're struggling with parenthood in any way, he says you blame it on yourself. And yet, when they're absolutely thriving and doing brilliantly, and everyone's telling you what a great job you've done, you kind of bat it away. Do you know what I mean?
It off, don't you? Like, oh, well, it's my luck. But actually, yeah, there's several things that I would like to pick up on. I'll finish off the point that you just made. I think human nature, especially English human nature or British human nature, is to never celebrate yourself. I think most people find it quite awkward to kind of say that they've done something well. So exactly what you said about if someone says, "Oh, how lovely your children are," or that they've done something well, you're just like, "Oh, can't be anything to do with me," because it's that kind of like, "Oh, I'm British. I don't celebrate myself. That's not what we do." Whereas, yeah, if something goes wrong, you're like, "Oh, can't believe that this has happened again." But
It's my fault.
yeah, but then also some people don't like putting out their hand and saying that's my fault. You blame your husband, don't you, instead? Something along those lines. But I feel that what you said about the difficulty of the experience of motherhood, especially in the early years, I really, really connect with that massively. I actually found the baby stage with my children really, really difficult. And at the time, you put on a brave face because that's what you feel that you should do. And you're like, oh, I love having a baby. Having a baby's brilliant. It's like the best. But I remember with my firstborn, with my daughter, I literally felt like I had no idea what was going on. I remember the first day, because we were in an NCT group, and for me, that wasn't a great actual source of support. It didn't really work out for me, whereas I know it's amazing for some people. Some people still have friends when their children are grown up and they're still close knit. But for me, it was just a way to kind of like get out of the house with a baby. But I remember the first time we were trying to meet up, I was an hour and a half late and I was sat at home in absolute tears because I just couldn't get out of the house. I didn't know what to do. And I was just like, I literally cannot deal with this. And I just felt awful. But then when I got there, there was, I think, six of us. I was the second person there because everybody else was in the same situation. And I think you just don't quite realize actually everybody is often struggling with a baby, but for whatever reason, whether it's societal pressure, whether it's because we don't want to lose space, maybe it's embarrassment, I don't know, I can't, it could be all of those things. You don't talk about how difficult it was. And even with my second baby, he was born 7 weeks early, so I had a completely surprise baby and a completely different experience to what I had with my first child. And I struggled hugely. And I don't actually think I appreciated the effect of the struggle the second time round, because everyone's second time round is so much easier. You know what you're doing, it's all great. Actually, second time round for me, it was pretty terrifying. And I felt even more kind of anxious, but for different ways. But at the same time, you're also still trying to keep this other tiny human being alive, because my daughter was only 2. So I think you don't necessarily, and again, I don't think I've actually admitted this before, about how difficult I found those phases, whilst putting on a brave face and being like, everything's great. So I completely understand what you've said, and see where you're coming from. And actually, I think women are better at talking now, but I still don't think we talk about these things enough.
No, I agree. And you made me feel quite emotional. I mean, I'm sorry for what you went through as well. I feel you. I shed a little tear then, because I feel like I resonated really deeply with what you said. And what I think that many women, and I'm not tarring everyone with the same brush, but what many women do is they perceive others to be kind of up here. Everyone's got it sorted. Look at them; they're there on time. They seem to be effortlessly working through this really tough stage that I feel I'm going through. We'll perceive that everyone else has got it sorted, and we'll compare that with our reality, and that doesn't do us any favors. And that's when the should comes in, isn't it? And should, we all know, is not, it's not a helpful word to us, because we're putting a lot of unnecessary pressure and expectation on ourselves. And I think that's why I do, it's certainly formed a lot of the grounding in what I do in my business now. Like you said, people probably talk a bit more now than they did. I'm here for it. I'm here for people sharing their experiences in business and life openly, honestly, vulnerably. Let's talk about it. I think what you did just then, when you asked me about my experience and then I talked about the doctor, I I've not told people that offline, let alone in a recording. And really, there's clearly something still in there. And so perhaps we need to put a message out to people. Please talk from the earliest point that you can, whether it's great stuff or really, really tough stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And I think actually, if you're really honest with yourself, you like, I know for me, I think I thought that just people wouldn't want to hear, people would want to listen to me. But actually, if I think about my friends, people that I'm close to, of course they would want to listen to me, because they're people that love me, they're people that I love, and I'm sure that every single person will be able to find one person within their network, within their wider group, within their family, their tribe, whatever you feel around you, there will be one person. And actually, they would be mortified to think that they would, or trying to put this in a better way, to think that they wouldn't listen if you think that. I don't think I've put that across very well, but hopefully the intention is there. And I think, yeah, because actually we are born as social creatures. We are meant to be in social environments, and unless we share these experiences for other people, like your experience, unless you share something like that, that's not going to necessarily improve for somebody else who might be in a similar situation, because no one knows about it. So thank you for sharing, Jo. And yes, as Jo said, it's all about talking, finding somebody and being there to listen for you. And I think this actually leads on quite beautifully to what you do, actually, doesn't it, with your networking groups and your meetups and the community that you've created. And a question that popped into my head, if you're happy to answer, is I wonder if this may be lack of connection that you felt through your experience of your pregnancies and early motherhood. Do you feel that this might be one of the reasons why you started to create these beautiful environments where women can genuinely connect in a way which feels good, which feels safe, which feels open to everybody, because it was maybe something that you felt that you needed but wasn't available to you?
Very much so. And that's so often the way, isn't it? We create what perhaps we felt we would have benefited from. And yeah, I'd been to some networking events, which I always was thinking about this before we hit record this morning whilst I was getting ready, and I have got such a memory of driving on a certain road with a meditation, like relaxing music, I should say, um, CD playing in the car on the way to my first networking event. And I was so anxious, so nervous that I listened to this music and I repeated to myself again and again how I was going to introduce myself. Because most networking events back then asked for the elevator pitch. And by speaking about the elevator pitch, they meant polished, they meant succinct, they meant bam, 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 say the same thing every time, because then people know what you're about. And so I was trying to create this elevator pitch on the drive. So I know that I was arriving with a lot of nerves. And the reason I say that is because I know how it can feel to go to an event. I know how it feels to do something for the first time. And for most of us, it's not comfortable. Actually, it's fear-inducing stuff. And I've been to many networking events in the past before I started my own. And I'd had people block me out. I remember going to one that was a lunch, and they said, right, so there's the buffet over there. Go grab your food and then come and sit down and then, chat. And the tables were in a big horseshoe, so this was in a hotel, kind of conference room style. And I remember I'd already struggled. A, I was very nervous. B, I've got some food intolerances, and most of the things at this lunch contained food that I couldn't eat. So I seem to remember having a very blank-looking plate. I was like, that's fine. I will deal with it. And there was one space left at this table when I sat down, and it was between two people. And so I sat down. I wasn't brave enough then to say, "Oh, hi, I'm Jo. What's your name?" But, that took a long time for me to get to. But these people sat with their back. One was facing that way, one was facing that way, and I sat at this table looking into the void, going, "Oh gosh, I feel so uncomfortable." And I think I tried to say hello. I hadn't introduced myself, and they were like, and then carried on with what they were doing. And so there's a lot that goes into why I started my events. But experiences like that made me so determined that I was never, ever going to allow another woman to feel like I felt that day, because on the whole, we're not all actresses. We're not all people that love to be in the spotlight. We are probably quite empathetic, emotional human beings. And so what women need, I feel, is something that's nurturing, that's welcoming, that's arms open. The 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 facilitator, the host, myself, welcoming a new person, asking them if they'd like me to go and introduce them to some people. People not to be in sort of closed groups. Have an opening in that group. Keep an eye out for that person who is perhaps looking at their phone, because actually they're not looking at their phone. They're just feeling really unsure which group to go and infiltrate. And so, yeah, I feel like it's really fed, a lot of the experiences I had really fed into what I knew I didn't want to have as a part of my offering. That's very long and waffly. Sorry.
No, I don't think it is at all. I absolutely felt every single word. I think it just what it made me really think was those kind of like party situations that you might have gone to as well. When you don't know anyone and you're feeling really brave and you're like, one person or whoever it is, and you're like, oh, I'm going to go. I don't want to go. And then you get there and you're like, I wish I hadn't gone. And you're just like trying to blend into the wallpaper in the background and thinking, oh, what time is it? Can I leave? Like, how can I just best leave that? So I think what you explained just then, the way that you welcome women into your world, it sounded like just an amazingly safe and kind way to say, actually, you are welcome here. everyone's welcome here. And also in a bigger picture, I really believe that we all deserve space in this world. Everyone deserves their space to shine. And it doesn't have to be like, as you said, on a stage, singing, dancing, moving around, but it can be quietly from within. And it sounds like what you present is the opportunity to allow people to step up, step in as themselves and just be, which is it's a really hard thing to do and to do well, I think. So what you described, I think, is just an amazing opportunity for women to turn up without the fear of these networking events where you can be like, I've got to be polished, I've got to be pitched, I've got to be professional, when actually, as we were saying all along, inside you're like almost like quivering mess of like, oh, I don't know. And yeah, I just think it sounded really lovely. So thank you for presenting these opportunities. And I know that you also have within your groups, you have people talk and doing masterclasses and trying to also kind of give a up level is the word that's come into my head, but I don't think that's quite the right term. So can you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm really glad you sort of picked that out actually, because it's something it's just something I do, but it is for a reason. So yeah, I'd love to talk on that for a moment. I I'm feeling emotional again. I'm so sorry. I'm emotional because I was that person that couldn't stand up and speak to people. I was the person who had so much self doubt that I just wanted to hide. And so now I am that person who wants to offer people the opportunity for visibility, for building their confidence, for allowing themselves to shine that light, because that light is within all of us. But we, whether it's societal conditioning, whether it's our own nerves, anxiety, um, we've got layers of protection. It is protection that are hiding that light, but I want to give people, as you said, that safe space to be able to gently peel them back, not in an effort to be their shiniest, polished self, but to, as you said, be. And I'm a big believer that we're never going to get to the point where we can shout proudly about what we do if no one gives us an opportunity to try that first time. Um, my husband coaches cricket, and I know we talked about that when we first met, but he always, in younger teams, has ensured that everyone gets to play the matches, not just the best ones, so it's going to be the best thing for the team. But how is that kid that's struggling with his bowling ever going to learn how it feels to be out on the pitch and improving if he doesn't get the opportunity? And so this is what I do. I want to shine a light on these women, and I want them to shine their own light. And it's it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And I've coached some of the people that end up being speakers at my events. They've worked with me one to one to build up that confidence, that self belief. I help them get to the point where they can step out their comfort zone and then stand there and bravely talk about themselves and their business in a brilliant way. And it doesn't have to be perfect. So I invite people to come with the nerves, to bring that worry and imposter syndrome, and to work through it. And I'm there to hold their hand, and actually quite physically, I'll sometimes go and give someone a hug as they're struggling, maybe even to just introduce themselves as part of the meeting, not as the guest speaker, because they're going through it and I can feel it. And I think I can feel it because I'm still there now at times, but I've certainly been there along the way. And if I could have a networking meeting every week, so I could get more people presenting their businesses, then I would, because there aren't enough months in the year really to showcase as many amazing women as I'd like to.
I love all of those things that you just said, and what came to my mind was, I think no matter how many times you do something, the nerves are always going to be there. But it sounds, Jo, that one of the things that you really help your clients do is use those nerves, that worry, as fuel, and then take them as the driver to just be like, actually, I might feel like this, but you then, as you said, physically, I can feel it physically, but also just like in that lovely, beautiful, emotional way, support them to be like, you know what, you've got this. I know you've got this, and I'm here with you. And I think it's just lovely. So what a wonderful, wonderful thing that you do, and giving those people that space in a gorgeous environment to just stand up. And I bet the difference in them, I the difference between the beginning of when they stand up and the end, it must be like watching a flower, like right in front of you, grow, bloom, 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 and then like be there. And it's like sheer like magnificence at the end of it all. So it must just be also so satisfying for you to see all of this happen and develop in that way.
It's incredible. They literally are evolving, and they're on a journey. We're all on a journey, and I think that that's a message that I try really hard to put out across all the things that I do. We don't have to be at that end point, that finished, polished point, and I want people to show up as themselves. And in fact, just to use one person as an example, because she sprung into my mind. Albina Kadrazi is a wonderful woman with a fabulous business, but she didn't feel that she had enough confidence to present herself. And she won't mind me saying this because we've spoken publicly about this. When she came to her first ever of my networking events, she was visibly shaking, and I'd already spoken to her beforehand because she said she was quite nervous. And I told her my story. I explained the struggles that I've had in that area, and the journey that I've seen her on just from coming to my networking events. And then she did become a one-to-one client and then became the speaker, is nothing short of magical. And at the end of her talk, the feedback she got from people who said it out loud in the room, including myself, was, you need to be on a stage. You are something else. And she presented for 15 minutes without notes. She told her story. She explained her amazing business. And the energy in the room, I'm feeling that energy now, remembering back. It's another level. And she said to me, if you'd have told me 18 months ago that I was going to be doing this today, as well as I did it as well, she said, I would never have believed you.
What a great story. Well done to her and well done to you. Just, doesn't it? The magic within you, Jo, to bring it out in everybody else is really something special. So thinking about you again now. So we're going to go back full circle to being Jo and talk about what kind of helps you in different situations. So we've talked about your lovely business. We've talked about your experience of becoming a mother, and I imagine now your children aren't still 1 and 4.5. I imagine they've grown up a little bit since then. So motherhood is a journey, and as we talked about, we're all on this journey. And I think at different times we need different things which help us to try and not only survive what's going on in our world around us, but obviously this podcast is called Happy Thriving Mum, so it's about thriving. And we know that we can't thrive all the time, but there are certain things that we can do which work for us to thrive. So what does happy and thriving mean to you?
Happy and thriving, what it means to me is, feeling in control as much as you can be, and not feeling completely overwhelmed. And I've certainly had my overwhelmed times. I think happy and thriving is also not making it wrong to look after ourselves as the mother, and not seeing that as a selfish act. And so I do a lot of breath work. I do a lot of walking. I love to sing. and music is a massive part of my life. I allow myself these things, even if they're in tiny pockets of the day, to just kind of re-energize myself or to calm myself, because we go through all sorts of emotions, don't we, during the week. But also
Sometimes in an hour.
exactly, exactly. Do you know something I would also say? Now the boys are now 15 and nearly 20, so yes, they're no longer toddlers. They're no longer in junior school. Um, what I've felt I've had to do, because I've struggled quite a lot with my mental health, is I've been quite open with them. And I've doubted that at times. And I thought, oh, have I told them too much? But actually, it has led to them being such compassionate young men. And it makes me so grateful to have them. And that in itself has helped me thrive, because I've not felt I've had to hide everything and put on, you know, like in business, and life's amazing, all's wonderful, and then go and cry in the bathroom.
Yeah.
So that's been quite a big learning for me as well. I hope that's okay as an answer.
That's an incredible answer, I think, because I think again as a parent and going back to the shoulds and what we are meant to do and not meant to do, I think a lot of us feel that we should hide all this from our children. We think we're actually protecting them by not talking about, like, mental health, for example, is a huge thing that I am so passionate about, and talking about that I think is so important. And I think if you try and hide these emotions from your children, how are we actually teaching them to show them that it's okay to feel this way and that there is support available, and these are actually the things that you can do to help yourself in that situation? So I think actually the way that you've approached that is so important and so forward thinking, because I think most people would just go and run away and cry in the bathroom. I think I think that's a real kind of like, oh yeah, I can't do that. I can't look like that in front of my children. But actually, maybe we should be doing that. We should be talking, having these conversations. It's back to conversations again, isn't it? Having conversations. And I think quite often the reason that we don't do them is because we find it difficult. But maybe those difficult conversations are actually the most important ones that we need to be sharing.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful.
So thank you. So in terms of that, I always as well ask guests to share maybe some advice to help other people thrive. And I know you've got a few ideas that maybe you'd like to share with us. So what would you say to help others thrive?
So I decided not to think too long and hard about this. I just went with what pinged into my head at the time. So the first one, and this isn't, I just want to sort of caveat it by saying I have not got it all sorted. I still find parenting incredible one moment and troublesome and tiring and the next. But take time to do fun things with your kids, no matter what their age, and don't be afraid to look like a bit of a silly Billy as well. And I don't quite know what I mean by that, but run around, be silly. Don't say, "Oh yeah, I'll come and be with you in a moment," but I'm just going to do the busy important stuff. And so often now, even though they're really ancient, these kids of mine, I'll be like, "Mum, stop what you're doing. Come and play cricket in the garden." And I cause such hilarity because they're both very good cricketers, and I'm not so great. But we just have such a laugh, particularly when the balls go over the fence, over the back wall again, and it feels like you can just all be on a level, and that's really fun, really fun. The second thing was, and we alluded to this, share with people you trust. And actually, what I've learned in recent years, in the decade or so that I've been doing what I'm doing with work, sometimes it's not your closest friends. Sometimes it's not your partner or your parents. Sometimes it's someone who is actually a step removed. but who has some experience in that area as well. And that's what I see happening in the online membership. The conversations and the um, understanding and feeling they're not alone is it's magical and it's game changing. So, suss out some people that you can speak honestly with, and find that common ground. And then the third one is take time for you, because it's not selfish. Um, your your time for yourself is not at the exclusion of everyone else. I believe there's a very positive ripple effect that then spans out to your whole family. And actually, kids notice when their mum is full of good energy or pumped or proud or relaxed. And let's not put pressure on our families, on our children, to only see their parents, sorry, doing, busy, 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 must do this, must do that, must not sit and rest and or do something for ourselves. I think that's something I'm very, very passionate about as well.
I love those three ideas. I've scribbled them down so that I haven't forgotten them. But the first one, allowing yourself to have fun with your children, I think is so important. And as you were saying it, my children are still, well, they're still quite small. So I've got a 6-year old, nearly 7-year old, and a 9-year old. And my 6-year old son is just like obsessed with sport. And he always wants to play football in the garden, he always wants to play cricket in the garden. And I'm always like, oh, I've just got to do this or I've just got to do that. And actually, you're exactly right, because I do go out quite often and play with him. But the problem with the football now is he's kicking that ball so hard that I can't go and goal anymore for want of fear of losing my head or a ball in the face. So that one I do try and like kind of step back from. But the cricket I love, but it is normally me hitting the ball over the fence, which is also a problem, but that's another thing. So yeah, your first one, actually having fun with your children. It sounds so simple, but actually it's so important. And just thinking, say yes to that, say yes to that more. I loved that one. That was a brilliant one. And secondly, as a theme I think we've had through this conversation is about sharing, talking to people. And actually what you said about having somebody who's maybe one step removed can actually be a real game changer, can't it? Because they give you actually a different perspective on things. They don't necessarily say the thing that you want them to say or that you expect them to say. It can be a different look or a different slant on it, which actually makes you sit up and be like, I've never thought of it that way. And it, yeah, I think that's a really interesting point of view there as well, to kind of share with somebody is the most important. I think that's the first thing. But actually the person that you do choose to share with, maybe for different reasons at different times, it might be someone, as you said, slightly removed or that closer person, but having somebody there to do that with is wonderful. I love that idea. And then your third one of actually taking the time for you to rest, to do what you want, and showing that to your children that it is all right to actually just not be on the go all the time and busy, 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 because you're right, the ripple effect is huge. If you can show up energized, happy, excited, everybody else feels the same. And I think especially as a mum, if what you exude, often the children then absorb, don't they? And so if you show them as a grown-up, you're always rushing around, you're always busy, this is what grown-ups do. Again, is that actually the life that we want for our children? Is that the life we want for ourselves? Probably not. So thinking about these things, I think, are really, really wonderful. So thank you for sharing those. I like to call them like 3 ideas, because I always think if one of those, you're not saying, no, we're not saying here, do all of these 3 things and you'll be amazing. It's like maybe one of those might resonate with someone and be like, oh, I'm going to go and try that because I haven't done that for a while, or I haven't tried that before, and just see. And so I think they're really, really lovely. Before we wrap up, I would like to ask you about your poetry, because I know that your writing is beautiful and I've heard some of it before. And I to be honest, I was thinking that you might say something about writing as something for people to try, to kind of even reading. just because of I know what you do and how much you do that. So maybe how did you first start writing and getting into your poetry, and how do you use that now within, is it one of your daily practices, or is it something that you sit down and do once in a while? How, just tell us a little bit about your poetry.
Thank you for your kind words. I started songwriting when I was about 13, and I'd sit at the piano. Don't have a piano now, but back at home, I did. And so I've done songwriting from a very young age, and really loved it. And actually, the poetry, again, it's been interspersed throughout my life as well. There was quite a lot of funny poetry that I used to write, about people, people in my family and what have you. But I would say that it was 2014, I think. I just I don't know. I just started writing a little bit more, and then when it came to the pandemic, I did something called The Artist's Way, and The Artist's Way is a book, and it's by someone called Julia Cameron, and it basically unlocks your creativity, and that could be, you might be an artist, you might be a writer, you might be a film director in the making. It really is not a one. It's not just for one specific creative practice, and the words just started coming so much thicker and faster than they ever have done before. And I do journal every day. And so, yes, if we could add a little four on the end of those three guides, write about how you're feeling, the bad times as well as the good times and the successes, because we work with a lot, and our shoulders can get very weighed down with a lot of struggle. But yeah, the way that the poetry has evolved now is I wrote a commission for someone. They asked me if I'd write a commission about 2.5 years ago, and they were developing a self-care box. And so I wrote a poem that went in the initial self-care box, which was being delivered up and down the country to their many subscribers. And she said to me when we were working on the project, if my subscribers like your poems, where will they find you, where can I direct them? And I drew a blank because I'd never shared my poetry, and so I created an Instagram account called Soul Voice by Jo Ferrone, and haven't looked back. And so I share my words there, and essentially they're words I've written for myself so much of the time, to support myself, to encourage myself. And yeah, I now have realized that they've worked for me, they've helped me, but actually other people want to hear them as well. And the reactions are beautiful. Quite a lot of people will get quite emotional because if you choose the right poem at the right time to read to someone, you can see how it hits. And yeah, they're just to support everyday life. They're not hugely literary. They are rhyming. It's probably the kind of thing that you'd write in junior school, but it's the way I like to write, and I'm kind of unapologetically doing it my little way.
I love that. And I think you might have one that you might like to share with us, do you?
I'd love to. I had two here. One's very much about going for it, going for that goal. But actually, I think with what we've talked about, a lot of emotional things today, and I'm thinking about other mums with younger children. So I'd like to go with this one, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
Take a minute, be still, slow your breath. Notice blessings, let go of the rest. Relish good things, no matter how small. Like a snow globe, let your concerns fall. Be present, simply settle mind. No fast forwarding, neither rewind. Just be, that is all you need do. Reveal the very calmest of you.
Jo, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. It has brought a tear to my eye, actually, as you said. You hit it on the right note. So thank you, and I think that is a beautiful place to say, Jo, thank you so much for being a beautiful guest today on this episode, and I'm just so delighted that we've had this conversation. Thank you.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me.